Sarah Palin did her first television interview last night. Is she ready to be vice president? Well, Tony Knowles was governor of Alaska from 1994 to 2002 and was beaten by Palin herself in 2006. He supports Barack Obama for president. Governor, it must be amazing to watch your old sparring partner go on to greatness here. Simple question. Is she smarter than we've seen? Not as smart as she appears? How would you calibrate what we're seeing with what you experienced as an opponent?
Well, in watching the interview from last night, Chris, it was troubling, if not frightening, to hear somebody talk about war with Russia, and I think the term was "so be it." There was a lot of saber rattling in there, too. But to be fair, since she's not been allowed to speak to the press or to the public really for 2 weeks, and we don't know when the next chance will be, we don't really have the feel for how she's going to be able to handle those issues. We do know one thing, though, in a speech that she gave afterwards in Fairbanks after the interview, that she did make the same old connection between the enemies who attacked America, Al-Qaeda, and the war in Iraq. And that's the same myth that has been debunked, the same myth that another vice president, Dick Cheney, has gone all along with.
Do you think she's getting being submitted to an indoctrination program? She talked last night with Charlie Gibson like a real full-blown neoconservative. She said things like, if Israel wants to do something, we can't second-guess them. She used the same phrase, second-guess, 4 times in a row. In other words, I've never heard of foreign policy towards the Middle East, any country like that. We listen to Israel, they listen to us. We figure out perhaps sometimes a common foreign policy. The idea of saying we wouldn't second-guess Israel, we'd help them blow up Iran, is insane policy. Of course you got to decide on what's U.S. interests in any case. Where do you think she's getting this from? Is she getting this from Randy Schuneman, the neoconservative lobbyist or former lobbyist for the government of Georgia? Did it sound familiar or unfamiliar the way she talked?
Well, what we do know is that it's new policy for her. And, you know, to give her a break, she's not been involved in it all. So there is no difference. There's no wedge between the McCain-Palin foreign policy or than the Bush administration.
Well, is she willing to simply recite, parrot, if you will, what the neoconservative line is as told to her by the briefers? Is she that kind of person? She likes this deal so much that she will recite the script.
Well, it certainly seems that way, and we have no other evidence since she's not being given the chance to speak with Americans. And it's funny coming from a team that now has tried to grab the banner of change to hear the same old rhetoric.
Yeah, let's take a look here, Governor. I want you to look at this. Here's Governor Palin responding when asked about the Bush doctrine. This is Charlie Gibson's question to her.
Do you agree with the Bush doctrine?
In what respect, Charlie?
The Bush. Well, what do you interpret it to be?
His worldview?
No, the Bush doctrine, enunciated September 2002, before the Iraq War.
I believe that what President Bush has attempted to do is rid this world of Islamic extremism, terrorists who are hell-bent on destroying our nation. There have been blunders along the way, though. There have been mistakes made. And with new leadership, and that's the beauty of American elections, of course, and democracy, is with new leadership comes opportunity to do things better.
The Bush doctrine, as I understand it, is that we have the right of anticipatory self-defense, that we have the right to a preemptive strike against any other country that we think is going to attack us. Do you agree with that?
Charlie, if there is legitimate and enough intelligence that tells us that a strike is imminent against American people, we have every right to defend our country.
Well, Governor, I think that is perfect U.S. foreign policy, what she said. She did not repeat the Bush policy. She said if there was solid evidence of an imminent strike against us in America, of course you'd have to act. The Bush doctrine's nothing of the kind. Bush doctrine says if anywhere down the road some country's a threat to any country in the region that it's in, we have a right to knock them out, take them over, regime change, and occupy. That's what Bush did with Iraq. She sounds like she's got her act together when she's not parroting what they're selling her. That's what struck me. In other words, her common sense is better than the briefing notes they're giving her.
Well, it's true that the Bush doctrine was a doctrine that was achieved after the fact. In other words, they looked back on Iraq and then were making a doctrine based upon what they were trying to rationalize what they did.
Yeah, well, I think so. Let me ask you this: how well prepared? Well, let me forget that question. Does she have the basic stuff to operate in unfamiliar terrain? I mean, you know what I mean? A lot of people are confronted with new challenges in life, and they quickly adapt to them. Has she got that basic canniness, that basic savvy to learn the job quickly, take over like Harry Truman did, for example, and do the job well, if she has to?
Well, I think, Chris, I think everybody knows that, at least on the surface, that she is the least prepared of any vice presidential candidate in modern history. But to be fair, I don't think that it's right to judge on what people on what office they hold, but it's on what they do. And she's been advertised as an agent of change, and an agent of change on wasteful government spending and on ethics. But what the American people need to know is what is her record on those issues, and there's some troubling and disturbing questions about it.
Who are you going to vote for, Barack Obama or Governor Palin of your state?
Come again?
Who are you going to vote for?
Oh, I'm voting for Barack Obama.
Okay, great, sir. Thank you very much for joining us, Governor Tony Knowles, former governor of Alaska. We got a lot of Alaska people coming on tonight. John Binkley's the chairman of the Alaska Railroad. He also ran unsuccessfully against Sarah Palin as a Republican in that primary back in 2006. Sir, I watched you debate her on a tape. It was interesting because you were trying to make some points, and not that I don't do this, but she was interrupting you rather consistently. Is that one of her techniques?
No, I don't think so necessarily, Chris. Really, I think in that debate, Murkowski and I really got into it a little bit, and she clearly won that debate. She stepped back a little bit from the fray that we were involved in and very calmly said at one point, hey, we owe the people of Alaska much better than this bickering. It was a pivotal point in that debate, and even though she may have not known the nuances of state government like Murkowski and myself did, she clearly won that debate. She won most all of the debates that I was in with her.
What did you make of her performance with Charles Gibson?
Chris.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Brinkley.
Well, I think she has a great ability to connect with everyday Alaskans. That's really what she did here in the debates. It wasn't all about the nuances of state government. I was responsible for the state operating budget for many years. I knew the insides of it, how government operates. She didn't have the background of that. Everybody accused her, including myself, of not having the experience, the capability of really rising up to be the job, to do the job as governor. And she has clearly proved all of us wrong. She's been one of the most remarkable governors that we've ever had in Alaska's history, and has accomplished things that no other governor has been able to.
Does she have more or less common sense than President Bush?
She has got a tremendous amount of common sense. She's got
more or less common sense than President Bush.
I don't know. I haven't seen.
Well, you've watched President Bush for 7 years. You've watched her. Who's got the most common sense of the two of them?
Capabilities.
Well, which of the two has the most common sense? Look, let me ask you this question, because I'm going to get tough. This is hardball. Do you think this president's been a success? Do you think this president's been a success? I mean, everybody has a right to answer it. I'm just asking, do you have one?
Yeah. I think there have been some problems with this presidency. I think the president admits that in some cases. But Sarah Palin's success as governor has been nothing short of stellar. She has accomplished things that no other governor has accomplished.
Okay.
She's done it by getting the buy-in of the people of the state of Alaska and done a great job at it.
The president declared mission accomplished in Iraq a few months after we got there. Was that common sense to think that we had taken over an Arab country in the middle of Arabia and would have no more trouble with it? Was that common sense? Was it common sense to basically ignore Katrina for 3 or 4 days before we got completely out of hand down there? I'm just asking a tough question. I'm asking, would Sarah Palin make those kinds of mistakes? Would Sarah Palin, using the kind of information that would be available to her, totally misguess a tough situation like Iraq, totally ignore a situation like Katrina? Reasonable questions. We have to answer these as voters.
I don't believe she would.
Yeah,
I agree with you, definitely. And I think you have to look to her record as governor, and I think she has demonstrated that she wouldn't make those mistakes.
What did you make of her answer when asked 4 times by Charlie Gibson, what would you do if the government of Israel, maybe Bibi Netanyahu, a right-wing government, maybe a middle-of-the-road government, Kadima government under Omar, called us up and said, we're ready to hit Iran.